All right, so the bill we chose was H.R. 1486, Trans Fat Truth in Labeling Act of 2011. This is a federal bill that was introduced April 12, 2011, and was referred to the Committee on Energy and Commerce. And this bill requires food companies to label any trans fats in products that are greater than 0 grams of trans fat per serving. And it prohibits companies from labeling these products saying that it has 0 grams of trans fat.
So this bill is obviously important because the current law allows food companies to label any foods that have less than 0.5 grams of trans fat as having 0 grams of trans fats per serving, which is just crazy because what the food companies have then done is just simply made the portion sizes smaller so that they don't have to list trans fats. In this current environment, people are becoming more and more aware of trans fats. They're becoming more aware of how detrimental they are to our health. In fact, the Institute of Medicine has listed heart disease, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, stroke, the raising of LDL levels and the lowering of HDL levels have all been directly linked to trans fats. So it's just incredibly important that people actually realize how many of these fats they're getting in their diet. And truth in labeling would simply allow people to make informed decisions.
Yeah, and I know that like 0.5 grams of trans fat doesn't seem like very much, but the American Heart Association recommends eating as little as possible, and they recommend having less than 1% of the total caloric intake be from trans fat. So someone that's on a 2,000 calorie diet, that's only 2 grams of trans fat per day. So if you're eating a product like your Doritos that you think on the front says 0 grams of trans fat, and you're eating more than 1 serving of it but actually has 0.5 grams of trans fat, you can easily get over 2 grams of trans fat. And that's not including like, you know, baked good products, cookies, margarine, that all has lots of trans fat in it too. So you can be consuming way more grams of trans fat than you should, or that you even know you are consuming with the current labeling laws.
And just to give an idea regarding serving sizes, if you were to take 12 Doritos, 12 little Doritos, and who eats 12? That's what considered one serving size. One bag of Doritos has 12 serving sizes in it. That is crazy. You can usually just sit down and just go through an entire bag, no problem. And you're getting, what, 6 grams of trans fats? So it's just absolutely insane. And people really need to be aware of it. This bill is going to require an asterisk to be placed on the bag, saying that it contains low amounts of trans fats. And then the trans fats actually have to be labeled in the nutritional information.
Yeah, and we really just believe that this bill should be passed because food companies just need to be honest with the food labeling and the nutrition facts, and they should tell us what is in the product that we're eating and not try to deceive us and say that it has 0 grams of trans fat when it really does have something in it. And especially with something as important as trans fat, which puts people at potential risk for diseases. So, you know, we just really want this bill to pass so that consumers can be aware of what they're eating and that companies are forced to be honest and accurate with their nutrition food labels.
And once this, and if this bill passes, 6 months later, food companies would have to start labeling all of the trans fats in the food, not just trans fats that are 0.5 grams or greater.
So it's pretty straightforward. So.
Thank you. Any questions?
Sorry, is your bill in the Senate or the House?
It's currently in front of the Committee of Energy and Commerce.
Is yours an S or an HR?
HR.
So, House, do you know if there's a Senate bill that's the same, like, you know, a sister bill to it too in the Senate?
Not sure.
Maybe not yet.
So how can we expect if the law passes to see the trans fat label? Because I don't know if you guys have noticed now on like some drinks, they have like serving or sugar per serving, or they have the nutrition facts per serving, and then they have for the whole bottle next to it. So would it be similar in that sense, like per serving, but then like with your example with the bag of chips, like whole bag of chips is much trans fat? Would it be like that?
This bill actually doesn't cover it. cover that. It wouldn't require that food companies list total trans fats per container. It still is only per serving, but rather than just being able to say 0 grams of trans fat, they would actually have an asterisk. It would require the food manufacturers to say that it had low trans fats, but not none, and then the trans fats would be listed in the nutritional information.
You know how, when you see it on the label and there's the breakdown, saturated fat and trans fat, different fats, is trans fat the only one that has this ability to not, like if it's 0.4, they can just put 0? What about the other fats? Do you have any idea?
Well, the other fats aren't quite as detrimental to health as trans fats. Trans fats hold a special place in that regard. Currently, trans fats are lumped in with saturated fats. And so, you know, they don't even have to be listed in the nutritional information. It's just lumped in with saturated fats and, you know, they're good to go. So this would actually separate and designate that trans fats would have to be listed as trans fats.
So I think maybe the question is,
I don't know.
if something is fat-free, that designation, can it have 0.5 or less fat? Because there is, like, non-fat milk, it's skim milk, it still has a small, imperceptible amount of fat. I don't know if it's 0.5 or less. But pretty much, if something says fat-free, it has to have 0 grams of fat. The difference with this is, it can say 0, does it say, yeah, it says 0 trans fat, and it can have 0.5. But, so if something's fat-free, it can't have trans fats in it. It can't have saturated fats, and it can't have polyunsaturates in it, in terms of labeling. Does that make sense?
Right, yeah, it just seems like trans fat's getting this preferential, or the trans fat industry is getting this preferential treatment. that
Well, it's
they
not
can claim
preference.
0.
Oh, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
they are.
But it applies, yeah, and they did that specifically because the manufacturers want to dupe us all and think, oh, it's trans fat, I can eat that. And yet,
There's no
if you
trans
eat the
fat.
whole bag, you're getting 3 days worth of trans fat, actually, you know, more than you need in a lifetime.
Also food lobbyists too, right? Are
Yeah.
pushing for that.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just curious about, if you see trans fat and it says 0 grams, like some other products, they don't list trans fat at all, right? They'll just list the saturated fat one. So if we see that, should we assume that there's probably trace amounts of trans fat? Like if we see trans fat 0 grams, should we sort of assume, oh,
Oh, you
they're
can-
listing trans fat?
You have to look at the ingredients.
Okay.
And you, if I have like the partially hydrogenated, then
I
you
was
know
just
that it has some.
Curious, because I know not all labels list trans fat, and I guess I would just assume that if they're not listing it at all, that maybe they don't use it.
I don't think they have it, because
Yeah,
it has to
my-
be included, it means they don't have it.
Right, that's,
Yeah,
okay.
my assumption on that, and I know we're not supposed to make assumptions, but if the product labels 0 grams of trans fats, have a look at the ingredient list, because those are probably products that will contain partial hydrogenated vegetable oil. And they're trying to say, no, these crackers are really okay, you know, 0 grams of trans fats per serving, and so.
Are there any other names other than partially hydrogenated vegetable oil that mean trans fat?
Hydrogenated vegetable oil,
And that's it?
yeah, it's
I've
that
seen
hydrogenation.
hydrogenated coconut oil, you know, any
So
time
anything
it says-
hydrogenated
Yeah.
or partially?
Yeah.
So if something says trans fat free on the front of the label, then it truly has no trans fats in it. But if it says 0% trans fat, or 0 grams of trans fat, then you look on the back and it will say 0.5 grams of trans fat. So it's all in, so it's misleading. They're following the law to the letter in terms of what they're allowed to do, but it's very misleading for consumers.
So, yeah, it's just calling for food companies to be honest with the amount of trans fats that are in the product and give the consumer a chance to make an informed decision on what they're eating.
Do you think it'll pass?
So there's a lot of pressure from food lobbyists.
A lot of money.
They're really not happy about it, so.
It's like us consumers against, you know, the food industry, and the government is not really protecting us for a lot of things. which is very frustrating, but there's, I think there's more of a voice, more people are interested in food and pure food and transparency and.
And more people are becoming aware of trans fats as well.
Right.
So that's really helpful. Public support is growing.
Right, definitely. Between 5 and